Have you ever wondered what time means when it comes to money? Most people think of money as something you earn, spend, save, or maybe invest, but they rarely see time as the invisible partner in that equation. Time is the multiplier, the silent architect that determines whether the decisions you make in each decade will build freedom or chains. The truth is that your financial life doesn't just happen one day, it's built piece by piece, decade after decade. Every 10 years is like a chapter, each one carrying milestones that, if achieved, make the next chapter easier, stronger, and more rewarding. But when they're ignored, the consequences compound. And by the time you notice, the gap between what could have been and what is becomes almost impossible to close. Today we're going to walk through those milestones, the ones that quietly define the path to independence, security, and freedom. We'll go from the first steps in your 20s to the decisive moves in your 60s, and you'll see how small actions can explode into massive results when time is on your side. Because what you do in one decade doesn't stay there. It echoes forward, multiplying or decaying depending on your choices. So as we move through each stage, imagine yourself not just as you are today, but as the person you'll become. Because that person is being built right now. And remember that the biggest shift will happen in your 50s, so leave a like and let's start. Your 20s are where it all begins. Not with luxury or wealth, but with structure. Most people see their 20s as a time to live fast, to explore, to make mistakes. And while there's truth in that, the biggest mistake is ignoring the foundation that will determine your future. This is the decade of financial identity. It's when you learn whether money will be your servant or your master. The first milestone of this decade is simple to say but hard to live. Eliminate bad debt. Not all debt. There's a difference between strategic debt and destructive debt. The debt that kills your future isn't a small mortgage or a low-interest car loan. It's the high-interest credit card type, the kind that eats your paycheck before it even reaches you. If you're paying 15% interest on a loan while earning 8% on investments, you're falling behind every single day. You can't build wealth if you're constantly plugging holes in a sinking ship. So before you think about investing, before you think about starting a business or buying property, pay off what's draining you. Imagine earning money just to give it away in interest. That's the cycle you must break early, because the longer you let it live, the harder it is to kill. Paying off high-interest debt is not glamorous, but it's the most guaranteed return you'll ever get. It's a guaranteed win in a game full of risk. Once you free yourself from that burden, the second milestone in your 20s is to build a savings base. It doesn't have to be massive, it just has to be real. By the time you reach 30, aim to have the equivalent of 1 to 2 years of your annual expenses invested. Not sitting in a bank losing value, but working, compounding slowly and quietly in an index fund, a retirement account, or anything that grows over time. Let's make it simple. If your monthly expenses are $2,500, that means by the age of 30, you should have between $30,000 and $60,000 invested. For most people, that sounds like an unreachable goal, but it isn't. It's the result of small, consistent choices. Spending a little less, earning a little more, and making sure that every month, some of your money goes to your future self. Because that's who you're saving for. The person you'll be in 10, 20, 40 years. The person who will thank you for being disciplined when it wasn't easy. Think about this. The median person in their 20s barely has any savings. So by hitting this target, you're not just ahead of the curve, you're changing your trajectory entirely. Having 1 or 2 years of expenses invested gives you something rare in your 20s. Freedom from panic. When emergencies hit, when jobs shift, when the world changes, and it always does, you'll have a buffer that keeps you from going backwards. Money saved early isn't just about security, it's about opportunity. It means you can take risks that others can't. It means you can say yes to things that build your future, not just pay your bills. And remember, if you're in your 20s, you have the greatest advantage of all. If you start your YouTube channel now, you can see huge results in a very short time, and it could get you retired in the next decade. So if you want to learn how, join my free Telegram community with the link below. Then comes the third milestone of your 20s, and it's one that separates those who drift from those who grow. Saving 15% of your income. Consistently. Automatically. Without excuses. This single habit, if started early, has the power to change everything. If you save 15% from your very first job, you almost guarantee yourself a comfortable retirement. The math is that simple. But it's not just about the numbers, it's about the mindset it creates. When you learn to live on 85% of what you earn, you free yourself from lifestyle inflation. That dangerous trap, where the more you make, the more you spend, until you're always chasing the next paycheck. By automating your savings, you give your future self the first cut. You make wealth a priority, not an afterthought. Imagine earning $3,000 a month and saving $450 of it. Over decades with steady growth, that habit alone could make you a millionaire. Not by luck, not by timing, but by consistency. And once that habit is set, it doesn't matter if you earn $3,000 or $30,000 a month. Your system will scale automatically. That's what the 20s are about. Building systems, not goals. Because goals fade, systems stay. Now pause for a second and think about that. Most people leave their 20s with nothing but bills, debt, and vague regrets about money. But if you leave with no bad debt, 1 to 2 years of expenses invested, and a 15% savings rate, you've done what 90% of people never manage to do. You've built the engine that, if maintained, will carry you all the way to freedom. You don't need to be rich to start. You just need to start before time steals your advantage. The 20s are your most powerful decade, not because of income, but because of compounding. Every dollar invested in your 20s has 40 years to multiply. Every decade you wait cuts that potential in half. Time is your leverage, and once it's gone, it never comes back. As you step into your 30s, the tone of life begins to change. You start to feel the weight of real responsibilities. Maybe you have a home, a family, or a career that's finally stabilizing. But this is also the decade where most people lose financial focus, where bills, mortgages, and day-to-day expenses distract them from the bigger picture. Your 30s are the bridge between survival and strategy, and the milestones here are designed to turn momentum into structure. The first is to have roughly 3 times your annual income invested by the time you reach 40. It sounds ambitious, but remember, the foundation was already built in your 20s. If you make $60,000 a year, that means your goal is around $180,000 saved. This isn't a random number pulled from the air, it's the threshold that sets you up for exponential growth later. Because once you reach this point, your investments start doing most of the heavy lifting. Let's imagine you hit $180,000 by 40 and stop adding money altogether. If that money grows at an average of 8% a year, by the time you retire, it could cross over $1 million. That's the silent force of compounding doing the work for you. Every decade that follows builds on this one, and every delay makes the climb steeper. So don't think of this milestone as optional. Think of it as essential. The second milestone of your 30s is to wipe out every debt except your mortgage. The earlier you simplify your finances, the faster you grow. Credit cards, car loans, personal loans, student debt. Clear them. They're not just numbers on a statement, they're anchors slowing your growth. Imagine trying to sprint toward freedom while dragging chains behind you. That's what debt does. But when you remove it, something changes. Your cash flow expands, your stress decreases. You start to see options where before there were none. Many people in their 30s feel trapped, not because they don't earn enough, but because their money is already spoken for before they receive it. By cutting down your liabilities, you reclaim ownership of your income. Now your money becomes a tool again, not a burden. Your only long-term debt should be your mortgage, and even that can be optimized through refinancing when rates allow. The goal isn't just debt freedom, it's control, because control is the foundation of wealth. The third milestone of your 30s builds on the habits of your 20s, but adds a new layer of resilience, saving 20% of your income and maintaining a fully stocked emergency fund. By now, your life is more complex. You might have kids, aging parents, a home that needs maintenance. And each of these adds potential financial surprises. An emergency fund is not a luxury, it's insurance against panic. Aim for 6 to 12 months of expenses in cash or a high-yield account. It might sound excessive, but it's not. Because when life strikes, and it always does, having that cushion means your investments remain untouched and your peace of mind remains intact. At the same time, increasing your savings rate to 20% accelerates everything. Every dollar you save now compounds faster because it has less time before retirement. You're in your prime earning years, and every contribution made here builds exponential momentum. The difference between saving 15% and 20% might not feel big month to month, but over decades, it's massive. That extra 5% could mean retiring 5 years earlier, or with hundreds of thousands more. Your 30s are a balancing act between growth and protection. You're no longer just building wealth, you're defending it. You're learning how to grow without overreaching, how to invest without gambling, and how to prepare without living in fear. This is also the decade where people either set themselves up for their best financial decades ahead or fall into the trap of lifestyle inflation, where more income just leads to more expenses and more pressure. You can avoid that simply by maintaining the mindset you had in your 20s. Pay yourself first, automate your future, and treat money as a long game, not a monthly problem. And as this decade closes, you'll begin to feel something new. The awareness that time is starting to matter more than ever. The 40s are on the horizon, and with them comes the realization that retirement isn't a distant idea anymore. It's a destination. The question is, how close are you to reaching it? Because from here on, every decade gets sharper, the milestones tighter, and the window smaller. And that's what we'll uncover next, when the goals shift from building and saving to maximizing and protecting, and where every decision determines whether your future self will thank you or wish you had started earlier. When you enter your 40s, something shifts, not just in your bank account, but in your perspective. The years suddenly start to move faster, your ambitions become clearer, and you begin to understand that money isn't just about accumulation anymore. It's about structure, protection, and preparation. In your 20s, you were learning to walk financially. In your 30s, you were learning to run. But your 40s, this is where endurance begins. It's where you start to realize that financial freedom isn't an idea. It's a clock ticking in the background, and every decision you make now either buys you more time or takes it away. The 40s are a critical decade because the habits you built earlier either start to pay off or expose their flaws. You can't fake preparation anymore. Every dollar you've saved, every debt you've cleared, and every choice you've made will now reveal its real effect. And that's why this decade carries milestones that are both strategic and deeply personal. The first major goal in your 40s is to maximize your retirement contributions. It might sound simple, but this is where the difference between comfortable and secure begins to form. You see, the earlier years were about consistency, saving, investing, learning. But now it's about optimization. Every extra dollar you put into a retirement account compounds for the next 25 years, and that growth becomes enormous over time. Whether it's a 401k, a Roth IRA, or any tax-advantaged account, this is the decade to push the limits. You're likely earning more than ever before, and your savings rate should reflect that. If you were saving 15 or 20% in your 30s, try to push it to 25 or even 30% now, especially if your debts are under control. Think of this like your final sprint before the marathon of retirement. The more you contribute now, the less pressure you'll face later when income slows down. For example, if you manage to contribute the annual Roth IRA limit of around $7,000 each year starting at 40, and your investments grow by an average of 8%, that alone could turn into almost $500,000 by the time you retire. But if you add a 401k, an employer match to the mix, the numbers become staggering. The lesson is simple. What feels like a small sacrifice now could turn into decades of freedom later. Because time is still your friend, but for the last time it's on your side in full strength. The second milestone of your 40s is to create at least one new source of income that doesn't depend on your main job. This is one of the most overlooked moves in personal finance, yet one of the most powerful. The reason is simple. No matter how good your job is, it's still dependent on one thing: your ability to keep working. And no matter how stable you feel, life can change without warning. A company restructure, an injury, a recession. Any of these can shift the ground beneath your feet. But if you have another stream of income, even a small one, it changes everything. It could be a rental property, a small side business, digital products, dividends from investments, or even consulting in your area of expertise. What matters is that it's something that earns for you while you sleep. Let's say you build a small online brand that brings in an extra $1,000 a month. That's $12,000 a year that you don't have to trade time for. Over a decade, that's more than $100,000. And that's before compounding or reinvestment. The goal isn't to get rich fast, but to start separating your income from your effort. Because that's the definition of financial leverage. When money starts coming in from more than one direction, you move from surviving to building resilience. You're no longer fragile, you're adaptable. And if in previous years you would have started a YouTube channel, now you would have a huge monthly income from this too. But don't worry, you can do it now if you join my free Telegram community with the link below. Now comes the third milestone for your 40s, and this one is often neglected but crucial. Have an estate plan. Most people push this off because they think estate planning is only for the wealthy, but it's not. It's for anyone who cares about what happens to their family, their home, or their assets after they're gone. Having a will, a living trust, and a healthcare directive isn't just about death. It's about control. It's about ensuring that if something unexpected happens, your loved ones are protected, your wishes are clear, and your legacy is intact. Think about it this way. If you've spent 20 or 30 years building your financial life, why would you let chaos decide what happens next? An estate plan removes confusion, saves taxes, and gives peace of mind. It's not about being morbid, it's about being responsible. In your 40s, life becomes full. Kids, parents, work, property. And the more moving parts you have, the more important this becomes. Because wealth without structure is like a house without a foundation. It looks fine until the storm hits. Now, as the 40s begin to fade and your 50s arrive, everything changes again. The word retirement stops sounding abstract and starts to feel real. You're no longer thinking about some distant future. You can see it on the horizon, but your 50s can be your most powerful decade if you handle them right. Because this is where preparation meets acceleration. You're likely earning the most money you've ever earned, but you're also probably facing more expenses than ever. Kids in college, aging parents, maybe a mortgage still hanging on. So this decade requires precision. Every financial move now must be intentional, not reactive. The first milestone in your 50s is to test your retirement budget before retirement actually begins. It's one of the smartest, yet most ignored strategies out there. The idea is simple. For 3 to 6 months, live exactly as if you were already retired. Use only your expected retirement income from investments, savings, pensions, or social security estimates. And see how it feels. Can you live comfortably? Are there surprises? Are there expenses you forgot to factor in? Doing this test run gives you clarity. Because it's one thing to plan retirement on paper, it's another to feel it in reality. If you find gaps during the test, you can still fix them while you're earning. Most people never do this, and they only realise their mistake once it's too late. A test run gives you a preview of your future and time to make it better. The second milestone of your 50s is to pay off your debt. Completely if possible, including your mortgage. This is a powerful shift because once your debt is gone, your financial life simplifies dramatically. Your expenses drop, your stress falls, and your ability to save skyrockets. For most people, the mortgage is their single biggest payment. Eliminating it can free up thousands of dollars a month, which can then be redirected toward investments or simply used to build a more comfortable life. Imagine entering retirement without a single payment due to anyone, just your basic living costs. That level of independence is rare, but it's achievable if you prioritize it now. It doesn't matter if you have 10 or 15 years left on your mortgage. Make a plan to clear it. Round up your payments, add a bit more each month, refinance if rates drop, and keep your lifestyle below your income level. Every extra payment is a step toward freedom. Because when you're debt-free, the definition of enough changes. You stop chasing numbers and start living. The third milestone in your 50s is to have at least 8 times your annual income saved and invested for retirement. This isn't just a random benchmark. It's the minimum that sets you up for a stable post-work life. If you make $80,000 a year, your goal should be around $640,000 by 60. That might sound intimidating, but if you followed the milestones from your earlier decades, saving 15, then 20, then 30%, you're likely closer than you think. And remember, you still have compounding on your side. Even a decade of steady growth can double what you already have. Plus, once you hit 50, you're allowed to make catch-up contributions to retirement accounts, meaning you can put in more each year and let those final years of high income work for you, instead of disappearing into taxes or lifestyle inflation. Your 50s are not the time to play it safe with effort. They're the time to push harder than ever. Because after 60, the game changes again, and risk becomes something entirely different. And that brings us to the final decade, your 60s, the finish line of the working world, but not the end of your financial journey. In fact, it's where money stops being about growth and becomes about preservation. The 60s are where the tone of life slows down, but the decisions become sharper. Every move matters because now it's no longer about how much you earn. It's about how long what you've earned will last. This decade carries 3 key milestones, and they're less about action and more about alignment. The first is to decide when to take your pension or social security benefits. You can start as early as 62, but doing so means your monthly benefits could be permanently reduced by nearly 30%. If you wait until your full retirement age, usually 67, you get your full amount. And if you wait until 70, you can increase your benefits by roughly 8% per year, a guaranteed return that no market can match. So this decision is strategic. If you have enough savings to hold off a few years, you can dramatically increase your lifelong income. It's not about patience, it's about maximizing certainty. Waiting just a little longer can translate into tens of thousands of extra dollars over your lifetime. And that can make all the difference when healthcare, inflation, and longevity come into play. The second milestone in your 60s is to rebalance your investments towards safety and income. In your 20s and 30s, risk was your ally. In your 40s and 50s, it was a calculated tool. But in your 60s, risk becomes something to control, not chase. Your portfolio should now lean towards stability: bonds, dividends, real estate income, or other low volatility assets. This isn't about fear, it's about preservation. If you built your wealth carefully, your goal now is to make it last, not double it overnight. The best investors in retirement are not the boldest, they're the calmest. They know that the game has changed, and now the focus is sustainability. You're no longer building for 30 years ahead. You're building for comfort, health, and peace. And diversification becomes your best defense against uncertainty. The final milestone in your 60s is one most people overlook: defining your purpose and lifestyle in retirement. It might sound unrelated to money, but it's deeply connected. Because wealth without purpose eventually feels empty. Many people retire only to feel lost, realizing that their entire identity was tied to their work. So before you step into full retirement, ask yourself, what will give you meaning when the paychecks stop? Will it be travel, family, volunteering, a hobby, a new project, maybe even a small business you run for joy instead of necessity? The happiest retirees are not the richest. They're the ones who wake up with a reason. And that sense of purpose will guide how you spend, how you invest, and how you live. Money is the tool, but purpose is the compass. Without it, you drift. And now we reach the final reflection. Every decade in this journey has carried its own mission. Your 20s were for foundation, your 30s for acceleration, your 40s for optimization, your 50s for preparation, and your 60s for preservation. Each one built upon the last, layer by layer, until what started as a few simple habits became a financial fortress. But here's the truth that few people realize. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. Even if you didn't start early, even if you made mistakes, time can still be on your side the moment you take control. Because every dollar saved, every debt paid, every goal achieved, they all multiply, not just in your accounts, but in your confidence, your peace, and your freedom. So as you listen to this and think about where you are, remember this: wealth isn't built in bursts, it's built in seasons. Each decade gives you a chance to reset, to refocus, to realign. The milestones are not rules, they're road signs. They don't judge you, they guide you. What matters is that you keep moving forward, decade after decade, with clarity, consistency, and courage. Because one day, you'll look back and you'll realize that financial freedom wasn't a dream at all. It was a timeline, waiting for you to follow it. One day you'll look back and realize that opening your YouTube channel was the best choice of your life. Think about it. If you've made it this far in the video, it means what I'm explaining to you in my free Telegram community works, right? So join with the link below and let me know if you're behind or not with these milestones in the comments, subscribe to this channel, and see you soon. Just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor. This video is for educational purposes only, and any results depend on your own decisions and actions.